Hi, welcome back to our Intro to Python here. We're going to go ahead and look at a story script that we created in class today, and we're going to start over. This is a Mad Lib type story, and we're trying to take this about as easily as possible. The original intention was to use the dictionary with this, but we decided that, you know what, let's just go ahead and get the variables and integrate those variables into a short story, and we'll include a function. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and open up a new little terminal window here. Actually, let's do this over the terminal window. I'm going to close this terminal. Open up a new terminal window. So we've got our terminal here. And if you want to create a directory called labs, you can go ahead and do that and pop into that directory. So now you're in your labs directory. And you can go ahead and let's Z. We're going to use Z for this. So we'll type Z and we'll type story.py. Now we can do story.py, or you can type lab_story.py, whatever works best for you. And we're going to put an ampersand at the end. That puts it in the background when we start up. So do that, pops up. First thing we include at the top of all of our scripts here or programs, we're going to include our interpreter. So it's going to be that shebang, which is that hash mark exclamation. User bin Python 3. Notice that user is spelled USR, not user. Then we can put this comment in today's date, 2018, 10/18, and then whatever time it is. We'll just say it's 2100 hours. And your initials, whatever your initials are. So just put your initials there. Now let's get started. In this case, we're going to make a really easy ad lib story. So we want things in there. We want three things. Let's say we want a var animal. We're going to do a var, let's say food, and we'll say var location. So we'll give those three variables and just an idea of what the story is going to look like. We'll just say var story. A var story, we're going to make that there were several, and we'll just go ahead and make this the var animal eating $var food in the suburbs of $, and let's make it a var city, that kind of thing. So that's kind of our story there. So over here, var location, I'm going to change it to var city. So that's var city. So how do we get these things? Well, if you remember from last time, we did our input where we typed that equals, and all these are strings, so we don't just specify int for input. We don't need to do that because it's actually a str, it's a string. So let's go ahead and do it input, and we're going to say enter an, let's say enter an animal, and we'll do this plural. Animal like this, and we'll just put, I'm trying to remember how it works. Plural noun, I think Mad Libs does it that way. So we do plural noun. We'll put a space there at the end, and that will give them enough room to type. Then next one down, var food. Let's go ahead and put that in input, and we'll say enter a food. Once again, looking for a plural noun like that. And we'll do var city equals input enter a city singular noun, I'll say singular place, like that. So we have our variables defined. Let's go ahead and see if this works so far. I'm going to go ahead and comment out this line right here, do 3 dots there, and those three, the 3 single quotes and 3 single quotes. You can do 3 double quotes too if you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and do that like that. And let's see if it runs. So I'm going to save this, Control S to save, or you can go up here, you choose File, Save, or you can just choose that Save the current file. Whichever way you want to do it, you just do it the way that you feel most comfortable. Now that we're here, we got this lab story. Let's chmod all plus execute the lab story py. Now what that does is this chmod all plus execute is it makes our lab story here executable. So that means we can run it now. Now remember, in Unix platforms, those and it also includes Minix and Linux, if you want to run this, you need to do /. That's a security feature where you can't just type lab story. We can't type lab. Notice it doesn't tab complete when I do this. If you do a /, that lets you run the file in the current directory. That prevents somebody from making something like LL, which is our listing, and making a file named LL in the current directory that's actually a virus, and then we accidentally run it. So we want to do a / lab story. We'll see what happens. Now I'm just going to do ASDF, ASDF, ASDF. Okay, looks like it's working so far. That's great. So let's go back over to our script. Notice it didn't give us anything because we don't have any print statements in there. We're just asking for input. It did assign the variables, but we can't tell that because we don't have any way of seeing any output there. So let's go back over and let's make our story. So over here we're going to have our var story. In this case, we're actually going to make a function out of it. So we're going to actually make a def func story equals, and we're going to put this little parentheses there and a colon, and this function we're going to tab in, because remember Python is very specific on its tabs. And that print statement there, we can do 3 there, we just do 1, doesn't matter. And if you remember, when we go through and we're putting those variables in, the variables do not have $signs or any kind of value in there. We have to differentiate those variables in a different way. So if I do it just like this, and actually let's leave it like that. And if we do it like this, there's going to be a couple of errors. Well, it being actually just one main error on here, and then it's just not going to do anything because we're not calling our function yet. So let's save this. We'll go back over, we'll run this again. So lab story, and it says, sorry, that's just not going to work for me. This func underscore story equals that greater than, that just doesn't really work out. So let's go look at that. Oh, well, sure enough, we got this function and got an equal in there where we're setting that. And we still have some errors in here. So if you spot those errors, then go ahead and say, oh, yep, I see those errors, and correct those in your own program. So I'm leaving a couple of errors in here. And let's run it again. And we're going to clear the screen. I'll run this lab story again. And it looks like it's working this time, but it still doesn't do anything. What's really happening is we still have some mistakes in here, but we didn't call the function. It never ran the function. Now the reason it gave us an error last time is because the statement where we're defining the function there actually had a mistake. That was an equal mark in it, so it was an error. Now it didn't catch the errors in the print statement because we never called the function. You see, we defined the function here, and now we need to tell it to run the function. So at this point we'll do func story like this, and we're actually going to call this function, which is going to run whatever's in there, and that's print. Now let's see what happens. Now that we're calling, see, we named it here, and then we're calling it down there. And if you notice, that function looks just like all the rest. You got like input with the parentheses and the close parentheses, and then they got the same thing here. So let's run that. So I'm going to save it, Control S. I'm doing Control S all the time. You can't see that, but I'm typing Control S. We'll do lab story again. I'm going to throw some stuff in there. And there were several, that's not ASDF at all. In fact, what is a $sign? Oh, that's right. So we go back at Python and we look at this and we say, well, Python doesn't use $signs to identify variables. But the variables didn't change color. And we go, oh, well, that's Python actually will have to specify those like this. See that we put the commas there, which remember the comma includes a space. If we do the plus symbol, there's no space. We got the eating there. We can do a comma, var food, comma, and in the suburbs of the city. And actually, this over here, var city, we're going to do the single quote, and we'll put a comma there, var city. And this very last one, we're going to delete that. So now let's check that out. So what we have here is we have the print, we have this print function, we open up the parentheses, then we go through here, we've got the single quote, we have our statement, We have a comma, which inserts a space when it concatenates for us. We do not have any quotes around var animal, so it's actually going to look up here for var animal, and it's going to pull that value down to there. It's going to look up here for var food and pull this variable down here, and the value for var city is right here. So let's see if this works now. And we're going to go ahead and run this. If you see any problems with the script, go ahead and pick those out in your own script there. So enter animals, so dogs, and they were eating apricots. Yeah, and then what was Chicago? And we'll just do Chicago. And now it says there were several dogs eating apricots in the suburbs of Chicago. So it looks like our Mad Lib works now. Now this one's very simple, and you get as creative as you want with the story. You can go through and create as many where you have these little inputs. You can create as many of those inputs as you want. You can create your own little Mad Lib story, and it'd be fun for kids or whatever else. And so this is a neat little exercise for us. Now let's move on, and we're going to create a random number generator. So that lab story, let's go ahead and save that off. And over at our terminal, let's make a new one. So we'll type Z, and this time for Z, we're going to go ahead and, well, we already have Z running. So Z's already here. If you still have it running on the screen, you hit Control N to bring up a new window. And now the new window, just shebang, user bin Python. You notice it's not giving me any Python 3, sorry. I did do Python 3 in the story, didn't I? Yes, I did. It doesn't know the colors because it doesn't know the name yet. I'm going to go ahead and put a time here, 2018, and I'll just say it's 10:18 dot, and it's about 21:10 hours, somewhere around there. And our name, so the initials. So now we have that. We're ready to start typing our script. Let's save this. So hit Control S, and it's going to say, hey, how do you want to save that? So I'm going to cancel that out right there. And we'll go File, Save As. We'll go over to somewhere else over here. Actually, the directory is going to take a long time to get to. So let me go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to open it up from my terminal because I navigated to a different directory in mine. And so it's going to be a long way to get there. So I'm going to do lab, and I'm going to do number. Or we can call it guess. That's a little bit shorter if you want to lab guess. And I'm going to put this in the background. Then I'll pop that back in there. You notice that it's all the right color now. So lab guess. So I get the lab guess there. Let's go ahead and start. What the idea is that we want it to have a number between 1 and 10. And we want it to maybe guess 3 times. Okay. So that's the idea. So if we go ahead and put the idea here, make a number guessing game that allows 3 tries to guess a number between 1 and 10. There. So to do this, we're actually going to import some stuff. And I'm going to import 2 things here. One of them is just for fun, and that's import OS. And I want you to see how OS works, and I want you to see a different option for importing OS. So if I type import OS, and I type, let's do os.system, and I'll type clear like this, we'll see what happens. I'm going to save this program now. Go back over to my terminal. I'm going to chmod all plus x, that lab guess, like this. I'm going to run the lab guess, and sure enough, look at that, it clears the screen when I run it. So if I've got a whole bunch of stuff on the screen and I do lab guess, it clears the screen, exactly what I told it to do. Now, I will use it this way, import OS, and then I will call it by saying os.system or os.name or whatever it might be. There is another way to do this, and so let me go over and just demonstrate that really fast. I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to say from OS import system, and then system clear like this. Now in this case, you notice that I said from OS, and that was the import OS here, from OS, import system. So in that case, only import the attribute system from OS, or I could say the system function from the module OS. And so now I'm going to save this. I'm going to see if this works. And I'll go over and run this. And sure enough, it works just fine. So if I do the screen and I run that, it runs just fine. So now I've got that. I don't like using this because you see that system. Let's say we had something else that was also had an attribute or a function named a system in there. How do you know where it's coming from? So you have to watch out for those kind of things. And if you have the os.system in front of it, you always know you're pulling it from OS, where you imported OS earlier. So it just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to use this one at top, import OS. And then I'm not going to do the OS system clear until after we import another module, and that's import random. So we're going to import random because we want a random number. And that's the idea of having a random number generator. So let's think about that for a minute. First thing I do want is I do want it to clear. And this is a Linux system. So if you want to get a little more advanced with this, and we'll go through and talk about an if statement with systems. If you want to get a little more advanced, you'll know that in Linux and Unix, you type the word clear. But in Windows, like Windows NT systems, you type CLS. You don't type clear. So we type clear and Windows types CLS. So the way to compensate in your software for people who are running Windows or people who are running Unisys, because we only have really a binary option. You're either Windows or you're not. So we could do that. We could type if os.name evaluates to, and we can put the NT in there like this. Then you could say over here os.system CLS like that. And we could put an else like this, OS system clear. And let's see if that works. We'll see if we made any errors in this or see if we made any errors in this evaluation when we did the OS name. So let's check it out. We'll run that. You notice it cleared our screen. We could also do other things. We could say, after that CLS there, we could open up and we could say print you are using Windows like this. And else we could print you are using a POSIX system like that. So let's save that. We'll go over and we'll run the script again like that, and it says you are using a POSIX system on our screen. So we know it's actually catching that code right there. Now if you remember last time we created this little function. We created that we defined a function. Well, let's say you wanted to clear some things inside of a program and you wanted to do it several times. Well, you don't want to go type this out every time. And of course, we probably don't want the print statements in there anyway. So we go ahead and comment those out like that. Comment those out. That way it ignores it as it goes through. So we don't want to have to type this out every single time. So what we do is we define, and we'll call this like func. And notice I do variables. I do var underscore. And for functions, I do func underscore. You don't have to do that. Or you could actually just do a functional and call it clear like this. And then you see this func, then capital C like that. Or you could do a lowercase. It doesn't really matter. But if you ever see these kind of things like fun like that, or func like this, and you see the beginning of the word is lowercase, then the second part has an uppercase letter, that's called Camel Syntax. So if you're using the Camel, though, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. That's because you'll have clear OS or something like this, like that. The first part's lowercase, and the second parts are uppercase as you go through the words. I don't do that. If you want to, that is totally fine. And I say I don't do that as a general rule. I don't really use camel that much because I'm using underscores, but camel is just fine. And of course you will use it occasionally. But let's go ahead and do a function, and we'll call it clear, and we'll do it like that. Now, once we define that function, we need to scoot everything over. So I just highlight it, hit tab, and then let's save that. And if we save this, you're going to notice I'm missing something here. Save this, and let's run it. Huh, didn't clear my screen. That's weird. Oh yes, we did not call function clear. So if you remember, we have to call those functions there. And if we call that function right there, then we can run this and it clears the screen for us. It recognizes it. It no longer prints that message because we don't want it printing the message every time you clear it. Let's say you have a few thousand lines of code and you want to just run a clear in there wherever it might be. You don't want to say, hey, you're using Windows. Hey, you're using POSIX. Using Unix or Linux or whatever. You don't want it saying that every time. So you just want it to clear the screen. So importing OS allows us a whole bunch of cool functions in there. We use two of the little attributes or the two little functions inside the module OS there. We use name and system. So you can see that. The system is actually just calling a system command, which is a system call, which is really great. Then we're using import random. So let's go ahead and look at random. Let's see if random does stuff. So we'll do var, let's see if I can see this, var number equals, and I'm going to try to just do a random integer. So I'm going to say random dot, remember that os dot when we were doing the OS portion for that module? Well, in this case, it's random dot because I'm using the random module. So rand int, and I'm going to do that 1, 10. All right, cool. I want to see what that number is. So let's print that var number like that. So in this case, I define a variable. Var number is this number, and let's print that number. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to pop back over, and I'm going to give that a shot. Okay, cool. Yeah, you can see it's going through and generating a random number between 1 and 10. All right, cool. So now we've got that. We're going to need to set up some kind of way that the system will know that we've only done 3 tries. So in order to do that, we're going to say var tries equals 0. So we're going to set that at 0 whenever this runs. Of course, we got our clear statement right there, so it clears it to start with. Var tries equals 0. We're going to generate a random number. We'll call it var number. Right there is the random number. And we need to guess. We don't want to print the var number there because printing the var number, of course, would give away the answer. So we don't want to do that. So we have the var tries 0. The var number equals random dot random integer. And let's go ahead and make a guess. So it'll be like var guess equals, and we want to input an integer. If you remember that from last time, and you can always Google these things, just pop into Google and say, oh no, integer in Python, or I have an integer problem. You can do int, and then you can do that input. Remember that right there? We did the input like this, and then we type, what is your guess? Put a question mark and a space, and we'll close that off. Now if we run this, we can actually run it right now, and it would ask us. So we'll go ahead and save it. We'll save it, run this, and we'll look at it. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, there's a problem with this. File, lab guess, line 23. Let's look down. Well, there's not a lab line 23. Oh, what are we missing, right? And so we'll look through these kind of things. We'll say, well, did we do our integer the right way? Was this all closed off the right way? Did we use that random int? Was that the right way? And we'll look through all those things. So look through that. We'll say line 23 still. We got this lab guess py unexpected EOF while parsing. Well, we do have var tries equals 0. Okay, we have a function there. And if we want to troubleshoot this, we can say, well, is this where our problem is? We can comment out the code. And for those of you who watched us do this in class today, then just go ahead and look at your code. And you can go ahead and start writing some of the fun little mischievous things that we created. But if this is the first time you saw it, then go ahead and try to work out these problems with me as we look at it. So we got this line 22. It's moving up now, so it looks like it might be down here. So let's go ahead and we'll comment out that. I'm going to leave that in because I think that's probably working. So let's try this again. Well, now it works. So it must be a problem here with our var guess. So we get this var guess equals that int input, what is your guess? And we've got this whole statement there. Or we could say, what we shouldn't say is enter, I guess we should say, enter a number between 1 and 10, like that. We should probably do it that way. But let's look at this now, and we'll see if it does anything differently. Nope, still doesn't work for us. And so we'll have to figure out where the problem is on this integer, where we're defining an integer. We're telling it input. We're asking for input on that. So where do you think it might be? So do you see anything that might be wrong with this? And keep looking over here. And it keeps giving us an error. But everything looks like it's typed correctly there. Let's see. Let's go through it step by step. So we have var underscore guess equals int open parentheses input open parentheses enter number between 1 and 10 close parentheses close parentheses. So there we go. Now let's check it and just see if that might have helped us right there. So we'll go ahead and do the lab guess. Enter a number between 1 and 10. We'll say 3. Okay, great. So our program is now working. We forgot one of the parentheses. So you have to watch out for that kind of thing. I'm going to push this all together there and because it's all running. However, this is not going to limit us right there. That var guess, we have the var tries equals 0. We have nothing where it tells us var tries or more, or while we're less than 3 tries, then keep going. We don't have anything saying like that. Maybe we should set up a while loop. And so this is going to be one of our while loops. We already looked at conditionals, and this is a conditional here. We're going to look at some conditionals again. A conditional is if something, then something else. And so now let's look at a while loop. Now a while loop is a loop that you're going to use when you're really unsure about the number that you're on at the time and you need to reevaluate where you're at. So let's say we're guessing numbers and you want to say while your guess or while the number of tries you've done are less than 3, then do this. Okay, cool. Well, you might see that I'm in class, I'm using a lot of for loops. I've used, I don't know, several hundred times. I'll use that for loop and I'll go through the systems and those kind of things. Well, those for loops are when I have a defined range. So I'll say for the IP address in that list of IPs, do something. And so in this case, we're going to use a while loop. So we're going to say, I don't know where you're at what time. So I'm going to say while, and this var tries, I'll say is less than 3. We'll give that a shot. We'll see how our syntax is looking on that. And so that while, then we're going to have that var guess come in. And then we're going to say var tries. And we'll do a plus equal 1 to try to increment that there. I wonder if that's going to work. So let's save that and let's look over at our Python syntax and see how close we are to this. So I'm going to say 4, 34, 2. Look at that. It only gave us 3 guesses. It looks like we're making progress with this. But now, even though we have this progress, we're not evaluating against the random number. So I hope that you're staying with me here. We can see we have our var tries there, as long as we're less than 3. And this colon at the end, you'll notice that we have several little, like the conditionals end with colons, and the loops end with colons, and our functions end with colons. So just pay attention. That's just the way the syntax works inside of Python. So that's the way it does it. In this case, this colon is not part of that. You'll see that this is in quotes. So if I enter like a question mark or something else, it's in quotes. So you don't have to worry about it there. So I'm going to leave that as a colon. Oops, I'm going to leave it as a colon right now. So let's go through and look at this while that. I'm going to say guess a number. All right, cool. And then let's if. We're going to do another little conditional here. If the var guess, and this is because we're guessing. Remember, this variable is set to whatever we're doing. So var guess is whatever number we type. If var guess is greater than, and I'll put over here var number, print too high. Let's go ahead and say if var guess is less than var number, print too low. And then under, I should probably use an elif. There we go, elif. And I'll use an else. And I'll do it this way, print. Great job. The number is, and we'll do it right there, var number, like that. And that will give us a little statement like this. And at that point, we want to stop the program. So we want to make sure that we close the program. So we do quit there. And that means if you get it right, it will stop. So if you get it right the very first try, it'll stop. Now that var tries there, we need to be able to increment those var tries. We want to be sure those things go through. And that's okay because it's part of the while loop there. So it looks like it's in an okay place. We could actually have it increment wherever we want, but we'll have it run through and then it'll take our one off. That gives us up to 3 tries there. So we have our var tries there. We can actually give this a shot right now, but we need a statement after this that print, and we'll say this is if you don't get it within 3 tries. So, oh no, you didn't guess the right number, or just let's just say, oh no, better luck next time. I think that's what we did today. All right, so there we go. In here, a lot of times you'll need to do backslash escapes for things like exclamation points, or of course if you have let's say an apostrophe, it's, you do backslash escape for the single quote. We don't have to worry about that in this because, well, it's all in double quotes and you're fine. You'll notice I use double quotes, and that comes from a history of using double quotes when you can have interpretation inside of them and single quotes when you can't with different programming languages. So in this programming language, Python, it doesn't care between double and single quotes, and so therefore using double quotes is just fine. Just be sure you're consistent between double quote at the beginning and double quote at the end. Let's try this script out and let's see if we have any errors in here. So we're gonna see if we made any mistakes. So let's go ahead and run this. Lab guess. Okay, cleared the screen. Arrow number between 1 and 10. Say 6, too high. 4, oh, too high. 2, too high. Oh no, better luck next time. Let's try it again. I'll run it and I'll say 6, too high. 2, too low. 3, oh, there we go. Great job. The number is 3. I was able to guess the number. And so it looks like our script works. It looks like everything's going fine for us and it's working. And that gives us an example of using a while loop. So you can see how the while loop works. See a little syntax operation there. You can see how we use the integer and the common pitfalls with using integers or anything actually when you combine a function like input or anything else with another little attribute, and you can forget your parentheses. So we looked at that today. We saw how we did evaluators. So we did the greater thans and less thans, and we saw how if conditional statements work where you have 2 different conditions. So over here we have if and then else, but over here we have if, then we have an elif, which is an else if, and then we have an else. And we can also see how if it doesn't terminate there, we can just say, well, apparently the program ended and nobody got it, so better luck next time. There you go. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope you liked the code we did. I'll go ahead and post the code in the, well, I'm going to try to. YouTube will block out my greater thans and less thans. So just pay attention to that. The greater thans and less thans will be killed in YouTube, but hopefully this helps out. And I look forward to seeing you next week when we start with Raspberry Pis. All the best, and I'll talk to you later.